All right. So, hello. I'm Joseph Lebrecq, and I have with me today Tobin Herringshaw. So, welcome, Tobin, to this little experiment here of mine. Thanks for joining us, and if you want to just introduce yourself a little bit, and we'll kind of take it from there.
Sounds good. Well, I'm glad to be here. So my name's Tobin Herringshaw. Let's see. I am a teacher, K through 12 teacher. Well, 9 through 12. I teach high school at a private Jewish day school in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's an interesting job. I teach photography, filmmaking, animation, and sometimes design for like yearbook or the newspaper or whatever. Um, I also run a lot of the media or create a lot of the media for the school. So that's an interesting part. And then another third of my job now is to create and manage the ACE program, which is a internship and uh, project and research kind of component as a sort of capstone to the education at the school. Um, I'm pretty much entirely self-taught when it comes to digital media. I never went to school for it. I went to school for liberal arts, and I started my teaching career teaching history and English and philosophy, but quickly transitioned over, saw a better opportunity, and also much more passionate about this stuff anyway. And yeah, I think I first used Photoshop in 1997 when I was making some kind of image to try and impress a girl who lived in Finland. I did it; it didn't work. Skills weren't that good, so apparently. But yeah, that's the first time I ever got in contact with Adobe, and then it's just been a love affair since then.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting because a lot of the stuff that I've gotten into over the years in terms of digital media has been self-taught more than not,
Yeah,
right? And I think a lot of people who kind of came into it around that time, like late 90s, early 2000s and
yeah,
everything, probably came in, and I also came in via Photoshop to that sort of whole area, because I was doing in my undergrad work, I did a lot of 35 millimeter black and white photography kind of stuff. And we
nice.
had a little dark room in our home and everything. My
Oh wow,
sister was into photography as well, and our cousin was into it. And actually, we had he had a dark room as well um, in the house he was living in. So we had a couple of dark rooms on hand, and as we kind of moved on, this was probably like this was really late. It was maybe 99, 98, 99, something like that. And it was like the end of my undergraduate studies. I'd been doing photography work, and we started looking at there were a couple classes I took where I can't remember what they were called, like multimedia something or other.
hmm,
And we had to make like PowerPoint presentations, and we also God, I wish I could remember like what the software was. There was this other piece of software for creating more sort of interactive kind of stuff. It was kind of like
hmm,
Director, but not really.
yeah,
And I don't know what it was, but we started doing stuff for that, and I got interested in around that same time in scanning things. I'd print them out in the dark room. I'd make my exposures, my prints, and then I'd scan them in to Photoshop, and then I'd kind of clean them up in Photoshop because in the dark room, I always found it really hard to get things perfect.
yeah.
But you bring it into Photoshop, and then you can tweak all those levels and everything, and sort of make them a little better than the imperfect versions from the real world, right?
Do you miss? I mean, I assume you've moved to digital, and
Oh
you
yeah.
don't really. Yeah. So do you miss elements of darkroom and
Oh
wet
sure, because I
media?
used to I used to spend like an entire afternoon, an entire day doing the entire process, right? Because
Yeah.
you'd shoot the film, and then you'd have your rolls of film, and then you'd have to go in the dark and put them on the little spindle, right?
Yeah.
And then put it in with the developer in there, and then you'd have to stand by the sink and I could listen to music while I, made sure every like couple minutes to swish it around a little bit to get that going, and then you drain that and you toss the fixer in, right?
Yeah. Do you think you've lost anything in the transition to digital that, is valuable?
I I mean, I find myself being less careful
Yeah.
because you don't have to worry about how many exposures you have left. You don't have to worry so much about a lot of stuff where like a lot of stuff can be just throwaway now where there
Yeah.
really aren't any consequences to it except for the consequence of being like super mindful about it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's what I find is a lot of my students, in the photography program, they are not intentional with their photography.
yeah.
And that seems to be a large area of focus for when I'm mentoring them is, look, you're just like lifting a camera and pointing and shooting. That's a tourism shot. So if you want to be a photographer, you got to actually make choices and be intentional with what you're doing. And it's just tough because oh, what? But I have like 5 million exposures.
Yep.
I'll get one of them right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah,
guess.
it's so easy to just go with that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the trick. I mean, I've over the years, developed this photography program to the point where I don't grade anymore because I don't believe in grade. I think they're stupid anyway for education. But then I stopped assigning work as well.
Hmm.
And I'm on this quest to try and like discover how do I keep students motivated, creative, breaking new ground, and developing quality work. And that element of them being intentional is still one I have yet to crack. Still, some kids are naturally do that, but most of the kids, they don't seem to want to think through the choices. They just want to pick up the camera and play around and experiment. And usually they'll hit upon something nice, but
Hmm.
they didn't do that intentionally.
Do you want to talk a little more about how that works with like, not so much not assigning assignments, but like not grading things?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I'm
So
curious about that. Because
yeah,
I've heard other people mention that they're either trying something like that or they've done stuff like that, and
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I mean, basically, I've been teaching for 15 years. And I taught in English, history, philosophy, um, and now did the digital media areas. I've been doing that for most of those 15 years. And I've just never seen a case where grading had any value to the actual thing I was charged with doing, which is helping a student learn. So my administration was very, uh, I don't know, I wouldn't say forgiving, but very gracious in their trust. And so they let me go in the direction that I felt was the right way. And so the first thing I did was, talk to the students and I said, what do you think about this? And, they were, of course, jazzed for it. Um, and so I had the students create a rubric. And we basically just did a mind map where I asked them, like, okay, let's get rid of numbers and let's just say, you want feedback. What do you want feedback on to grow as an artist, as a student, as a person? What kind of feedback would you want if that was how you're going to be graded? And we created this beautiful mind map, and then we chunked it into 4 areas. So there's artist behavior, there's student behavior, there's studio behavior, and then there's the work itself. And there's like 5 or 6 categories in each of those. That rubric doesn't have any place to put a grade, doesn't have numbers or anything, just has a section for notes
Hmm.
at the bottom. And at this point, I don't even use that anymore. I mean, I don't pull it out and look at it. And I've memorized it, and the students pretty much memorized it. And everything is a conversation now. I still have to give a grade, still have to play within the system. So every month I give them 100 points grade. And that grade is pretty holistic based on those 4 areas, what I see every day with the student, and what they do, how risky are they with their art, et cetera, things like that. And so far, every parent that I've ever talked about it with loves it.
Hmm.
Every teacher says, well, you can get away with that because you're doing photography. You're not doing real subjects like math or English. And every time I say, well, why don't we switch this year? You teach photography, I'll teach English, and I'll teach it my way, without grades, and we'll see the result. Because I'm pretty confident that if you took away grades from all the subjects, you'd probably have much better students, much happier students, and more productive students. But you can't just take away the grades. There's so many other pieces that I found have to go with it,
Right.
because grades provide a lot of forced structure. In a negative sense, they provide that structure, and as soon as you get rid of that, the student, is still a kid, and they're gonna suffer from a lack of structure, and that's where a lot of things break down.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
that's good, because I think normally when people think like no grades, they
yeah,
automatically go to like, just like just nothing, where
right,
you've
yeah,
got no kind of real feedback or interaction or anything like that. So I think
no,
the explanation that you gave for it, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. It's just taking away the sort of the artificial nature of assigning a point or a scale to their work, which is always hard
something,
too, because I mean, I always get stuff where you've got people who you know, students will like beg and claw for like a couple little points on something. And it's
yep,
kind of like, that's not it's not what we're trying to do here.
yeah.
That doesn't matter.
We're not making lawyers here, and they don't
Mm,
need to, be the rules lawyers where they're nickel and diming for little points,
yeah.
which is, totally away from the whole purpose of why they're there. I mean, they're not there to learn how to do that. They're there to learn the subject and the
Yeah.
skills. And I've actually moved towards, like, one of the things that helps when you stop grading is if you move towards a more project-based environment where you create authentic projects with authentic audiences. And so my students don't, I also stopped assigning stuff. So I never assign anything either. Um, Basically, I throw out challenges, and those are equivalent to, like, I guess, lessons or whatever. But for the most part, I don't even teach them how to do the thing that I'm asking them to do or challenging them to do. It's a very much student-centered environment where they have to teach themselves, and I'm there to mentor them through the experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, one of the big projects, it's been going on for a year now, and it'll probably be another year, is I have 3 students making a feature-length documentary about the first responders who helped save lives during the October 1st shooting here in Las Vegas at
Right.
the Route 91 Festival. And, we've been very fortunate. We've had a lot of access to the first responders and to survivors, as well as elements of the government around Las Vegas and the Golden Knights. And so, the kids have a wonderful opportunity. But I've never really taught them how to edit. Never taught them how to use the cameras all that well. I mean, I teach the very basic stuff, but they've had to learn. I haven't taught them structure, story structure, how to put together a documentary. Like, all of that is part of their experience where they have to figure out how to learn how to do that thing. And, I'm there to support them. Of course, I offer suggestions, or I help make corrections, or I get them unstuck. But the thing I don't do, which I see most teachers tend to do, is give them scaffolding or structure or something that essentially steals away the whole element of learning from them. And so all they're doing is either regurgitating or repeating, mimicking. And to me, that has little value in today's world. If a student can self-sufficiently put together a documentary of this length and this importance, with this kind of subject, like, they're pretty much going to be able to do whatever they need to do to be successful in life.
Hmm.
And, so skills where they have to contact these survivors, and like the interviewing of people who are, tearing up because they're talking about seeing a bunch of dead bodies. Like, this stuff is not easy for these kids, but it's such a great experience to see them go through it and they mature through it. Yeah. So that project-based element really, to me, is vital when you stop grading. Yeah. But like I've done so much professional development throughout the years, and like I've looked at the studies about like the 800 different studies done about homework and its relevance to academic success, and like all 800 pretty much say there's no connection,
Mm-hmm.
and so like homework is just mostly garbage. And then I researched about grading and where did grading come from, and it's some English guy who got this brilliant idea. He was a tutor, and he got this brilliant idea to make more money. That if he, instead of writing comments and meeting with the parents and talking with them, if he just assigned numbers, it would be a lot faster for him, and they could still get the where he's at or where the student's at, and then the guy could make more money because he could take on more students.
Mm.
And that's essentially the basis for all grading, or at least Western grading. So I thought, well, okay, well, that pretty much convinced me like grading is garbage. And feedback is what's important. Student needs feedback and mentoring. And I may teach in an independent school where my numbers are pretty low in terms of class size, and so I have the opportunity to work with students one on one pretty much every day. I mean, I pretty much make it a goal to meet with every student every single class period, even if it's just to say, "Hey, how you doing? Great, cool, see ya." Um, but I know the public system in the U.S. for K through 12 doesn't really allow for that because it's just so overcrowded, underfunded, and teachers are not trained well. So,
And I think they're mostly, and I could be wrong. I've done substitute teaching like years and years ago for like K-12 public schools, but
yeah,
I've never been like really like involved in that area. But I mean, my perception is that they're kind of oftentimes they have to align with certain standards and tests
hmm
and things like that, where it's kind of necessary for them to sort of go
yeah.
along and
No,
do that sort of thing, do
yeah,
the
and
old school grading and
I don't fault the teachers because the
yeah,
teachers
yeah,
are stuck in a system, and they can't really get out of it. Now, they can uh, make every attempt, and I think they should make every attempt to skirt some of those bureaucratic silliness rules, and like standards are. I mean, I understand that theoretically the concept of standards works really well, but it tends to force a teacher and a classroom and an environment to like bring it to the lowest common denominator of instruction instead of elevating the instruction. Whereas I feel pretty confident, like I meet every standard that I need to meet for my, even though I'm independent, we don't officially have to meet the standards. We don't have anybody looking over our shoulder. Um, I still meet all the standards. I meet ISTE standards. I meet the language arts standards because students are writing
yeah.
and they're producing, and so I guess I've never really spent much time worrying about it because I know the times that they have had me writings and align them to standards, it's so simple because the kids are doing so much and they're doing most of this stuff on their own in the sense that they're learning these skills that it's really easy to say, oh yeah, of course they're doing this. Like they couldn't have created this project without it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so, and that's the thing. I think my message isn't going to be received all that well when I talk about it this way because I think a lot of teachers are stuck in that system and they don't necessarily see the way out. And I don't blame them because it's a really depressing system to be in. But there are places and cases where teachers do break out of that. They find a way to provide better instruction, better pedagogy, and they still work within the same system. But I don't know. My opinion is the K through 12 public system should just be imploded, and we should start over. But that's never going to happen. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's too entrenched politically and financially into the abysmal mess it is that I don't think it'll ever change. So just got to
Yeah.
find a way to work within it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the people that we interface with, like in the AEL community and stuff like
Yeah.
that, I mean, it seems like a lot of people are like actively, even if they are in that sort of situation, they do go the extra effort
Yes.
to to make it the best it can be.
Yeah, I think the AAL community is a self-selecting community that, we are already those folks um, who will find better ways to operate and better ways to teach.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know. That's my
Yeah.
thoughts.
So you mentioned that you are in Vegas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the some of the work that you were doing with your students around topics in that area. I'm curious, have you been in Vegas for a long time?
I've like I lived here in the 90s, 97 to 2001, right up to 9/11. And then I moved back east to Baltimore
Hmm.
for 13 or 14 years. And then I moved back here when a job opened up. It just so happened that I came back here.
Yeah.
Um, and that was to start the digital media program at the school on that.
Hmm.
So I've been here since 2013,
Okay.
and so 5 or so years, and same school, and yeah. So I don't know.
Did you
Yeah.
so a few years ago Adobe held their Max conference
Yep.
in Vegas.
I
Did you attend
Yeah,
that?
I did, and then um, I had the Tracy and or Tacey, not Tracy, Tacey, and several others. I just blank on their names. It was a while ago,
Yeah.
but a lot of AELs came over to the school because we had just built this what we call the startup incubator. It's like a five.
Ah, I remember that.
Yeah, were you
Yeah.
there?
I didn't go because I
Oh,
had
okay,
something else going on,
okay,
but I was at Max and I remember running into Tacey and I think was Remy there at the time, maybe?
yes, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and they had mentioned that, oh hey, there's like this cool stuff going on. We're having a tour, at this local
yeah,
school, and we're getting
yeah,
something together. Do you want to go? And I was like, oh, I've already got something,
yeah.
that
Well,
night. But yeah,
yeah,
so I
that
didn't
was
get to go and see it, but
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, it was cool. We built this incubator space where a third of it is the digital media studio, a third of it is a maker space, and a third of it's a coding lab. And they integrate all three, but it's where my students work. With They have pretty much every tool that they need to do their work. We have a whisper room and
Mm,
all the Macs and 25 cameras and just tons of stuff. And that was where they got to meet Tall, one of my students, who created a short documentary about the city using salt up on the local mountain, and it's killing all these really old ponderosa trees.
hmm.
So there's this campaign to halt the salt, and he made a documentary, won Best Nevada Filmmaker in the Damn Short Film Festival, and got into the Gale Environmental Film
Oh,
Festival, and
nice.
yeah, I mean, he did pretty good for that. But that was one of those programs where projects were, you know, very self-sufficient. Didn't Was very stubborn. Wouldn't wouldn't take to a lot of my suggestions when he was editing. He had to learn the hard way through through a lot of mistakes and like going, oh yeah, that didn't work out. But,
Yeah. So
but
what do they do with salt on the mountain? Like, what's the purpose of that?
so during the winter months, we get a lot of snow up on these mountains because these are like 7,000 feet
Okay.
up. So they spread the salt on and it's really cheap. Um, but that salt, ends up leaching into the ground. The trees get dried up near the roads, and then the beetles come in,
Mm,
and the trees are already stressed, and so the beetles have a field day, and then the city cuts them down, and so we have this beautiful shot of a really large old tree getting cut down, by these city officials, and it's just really sad.
yeah.
But it's like in 1 year there was like 700 trees cut down. So there's the people who live up there, as well as people who care about nature and about the ecosystem up there, which is a very unique ecosystem. They want it stopped, and it had some salutary effect, I guess, because they did switch to sand a year after, and so now they put sand up there on the mountain. They
Hmm.
still use salt down on the bottom of the mountain, but not as much near the trees. So you know it certainly contributed to that campaign, which I think was really good, and certainly one of the main goals of that project.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, before I moved out to Colorado, I lived in Massachusetts for like
Mm,
the first like 24 years of my life. And they always used like a salt and sand mixture kind of thing on the roads
yeah.
out there. And it was pretty effective. And when I moved out here, they don't tend to even treat the roads.
Yeah.
Like sometimes they'll put some like pre-treatment on stuff, but
Yeah.
they don't, because we're so close to the sun and everything. And I'm sure it's like that in Vegas too, where it's just very hot,
Yep.
right? But the sun comes out and I mean, the snow doesn't last
Yeah.
here. I mean, in the mountains, sure, but down here, like in the Denver area and everything, and major roads, I-25, it'll last a couple hours. That'll
Yeah.
be it. Sun pops up, burns it all away.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we did
Well,
have problems with you mentioned beetles. We've
yeah.
had problems with I think they're the ash borer
Hmm.
beetle, and they've been killing a lot of the ash trees in the area. So
Yeah.
people are inoculating their ash trees.
Yeah. I mean, there's, the weather's changing due to climate change, so that is affecting a lot of these patterns that, we used to be able to rely on. But I think, mostly we're causing stress on trees and on the environment, and that's allowing for the beetles and the parasites of the world to do a little bit more damage. But it's Earth. When we're gone, Earth will just shrug it off and continue existing until the sun explodes. So, but
Yeah.
yeah. Um, so this is something interesting. I had a heart transplant, and I've been out, and it's been a really unique experience being away from the school. I had my friend sub in, he's not a teacher, but he is a industry professional. Does mostly digital, what is it, CGI stuff
Hmm.
for film and television. Has his own company, but he knows photography, he knows filmmaking, he knows all these things. So he subbed in. And it was just interesting to see that perspective, a new teacher taking over my class with students mostly who had been with me already for a year or two and was very used to my methods. And then they had to switch gears, because, he did it his way.
Yeah.
So that was just really, really interesting. The only thing I worried about was the AP photography kids because he had never gone through the AP process. And so, I was fortunate enough to, get through the transplant and heal up pretty quickly so that I could come back and help the kids finish out their portfolios. And maybe they're not the strongest portfolios or the strongest year of portfolios, but I think they'll do fine.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
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 No, that's so. How long has it been since you've had to deal with the transplant?
I had the transplant November 10th of 2018. So I'm like 7.5, almost 8 months.
Hmm.
And I bounced back like right away. I was out of the hospital in 10 days and everything, like I had no real complications. I went back to the hospital twice for a couple days, but that's pretty normal.
Yeah.
And then I've had no problems since, and just been kicking butt.
That's
I got a very young heart, so it was really nice to know that it's a young, strong heart. My body seems to have adapted with it just fine, and yeah, so I'm still a little worried about going back because we're a K through 12 school, and while I'm mostly segregated into this media lab, and I don't usually go too many other places, a third of my job is to create media for the school, which includes going to the lower school and photographing the kids or
hmm.
filming some things. So a little bit worried because little kids are just germ bombs,
Right.
and that's one of the main things I have to do is make sure I don't get infected by anything. So lots of face masks and hand
Hmm.
sanitizer, and I get to kick my own students out if they're sick.
Mm-hmm.
They don't get to come to class that day. So, it'll be an adjustment. But I think on the whole, like I'll shake, like most of this stuff just isn't gonna stop me from doing what I normally do.
Yeah, that's like crazy that they can even do that in the first place.
The what, transplant or
Yeah, but
yeah,
but then to be able to bounce back so quick too, I
yeah,
mean, that's really amazing.
it's yeah, it is weird because it's a little surreal. A lot of crazy stuff when you actually go through it. The drugs are just insane, especially when you first come out. But like at this point, it just feels like it was another surgery. I mean, I had a congenital heart defect, so I've had
Mm,
surgeries all throughout my life, and it just felt like another surgery, and or at least now it does. At the time, it didn't.
yeah.
Um, but it's definitely a good story. It's like, isn't that what they say? It either kills you or it's a good story. So
Mm,
it is a good story. Yeah. But now, I think it's so pedestrian for these surgeons. I went to UCLA where they do like 250 plus heart transplants a year. So, it wasn't that big of a deal for them. And, they're very good at it and they take very good care of you while you're there. So, I mean, I think everything worked out really well. I'm not sure why I'm so lucky because, I certainly saw other people who weren't as lucky and had a lot of complications. But generally, people, you know, the sense is you're not going to die from the transplant, you're going to die from the complications.
right.
And, so to not have any complications is a really good thing. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Anyway,
you mentioned before too that one of your interests is gardening.
yeah.
What kind of stuff do you garden?
Well, I mean, it started mostly because I didn't have any ability to do like I can't go to a movie theater yet. I can't fly anywhere yet. So I was like, all right, well, I got to find some hobbies at home. And one of my buddies had started a hay bale garden where you literally grow stuff on top of the hay bale.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, I want to grow stuff now. And I love peppers. So like I saw he had some peppers and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna. So I just, I have a backyard. Most Vegas backyards are just like rocky, terrain with a few cacti and, it's pretty gross looking in my opinion. I grew up in Michigan, so I like a lot of green. So I was like, all right, I'm going to transform my backyard. So I built some beds to start off with, some raised beds, but they're actually on stilts, so they're up off the ground.
Hmm.
Because otherwise, the ground is just clay and rocks.
Yeah.
I had to bring in all the dirt and everything, the soil. But right now, I have a pepper station that has jalapenos and habaneros and
Mm-hmm.
chili reds. I have this wonderful at school. One of the projects in incubator was a hydroponic system that the students built,
Mm,
and
neat.
then they were figuring out what are they going to grow, and so they decided to grow the hottest pepper in the world, the Carolina Reaper.
Mm-hmm.
And so they started growing it, and those kids graduated, but the Carolina Reaper's still sitting there, in the
Mm,
hydroponic system. And the hydroponic system had to be taken down because the guy who was watching it left the school. But he gave them to me. He was like, "Here you go, you have them." So I brought that one home, transplanted it into soil, hardened it to the sun, but it did not take very well at first. Lost most of its leaves, but now that thing is like the healthiest plant out there. It's so hardy.
hmm.
Hasn't flowered yet though. I'm waiting for it to flower so get some fruit on that tree. But I have like 4 fruit trees and some tomatoes, and then in the big bed I have like carrots and onions and just the normal stuff you'd have. I got to eat healthy now, so I figured might as well make the food here.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't do any gardening at my home here, but we've got some like ornamental pear trees and ornamental plums and stuff like that, but you can't
Yeah.
eat them. Um, I used to we had a couple gardens back east, and we'd grow like rhubarb
Oh
and
yeah, yeah.
lots of potatoes, carrots, cucumbers, lots of cucumbers. I used to grow gourds quite a bit.
Oh wow. Okay.
I always had fun growing gourds because then you can like, I mean, you can't really eat them, but you know, you can take them and around Halloween time and everything,
Yeah.
you dry them out and do cool stuff with them. It was
Yeah, I
always
have some.
fun.
Yeah, I have some pumpkins, and I planted them at the right time. So, if all goes well, I should have some pumpkins to carve around October, which would be
Nice.
nice. Yeah, I just found like it's a lot of the surgery, like the only real consequence of the surgery at this point is a lot of anxiety that comes about because you're kind of walking on eggshells because if you ever get infected or something could go wrong, and usually it does in the first year. Um, and so I found that gardening, when I'm out there, it's just very relaxing, and that anxiety just kind of dissipates away,
Hmm.
which is nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm hoping to grow some good food out there, and I put in a watering system. Like in Vegas, I found like the first few plants just really did not do well because it was so hot and the sun is so strong. And when they say full sun, they don't mean full Vegas sun. So
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
had to adjust and put them under an awning and some sunblock material. But I've got everything figured out, and then watering, consistent watering was the big key to getting everything to just calm down. So I bought a little watering system, and that was fun to put together.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that I worry about when I think about because we've thought about gardening here, but it's like in the summer it gets so hot. Even in
They don't,
Colorado, it's like,
yeah, they don't care about the heat. They just care about the sun because the sun will fry their leaves. But the heat isn't really that big of a deal. It's
mm,
more the sun itself, and then just the evaporation of water. Like I would go out there and water in the morning, and by 10 a.m. I can stick my hand 6 inches into the soil and it's dry as a bone. It's just so
yeah.
much evaporation going on. So the watering system, is like $100 to buy all the tubing and the
Hmm.
little emitters, and I think I have probably 50 or 60 emitter like places that drop out water, and a little timer on there with the outside faucet, and it's real cheap, and it works really well. So
Ah, cool.
yeah,
Wow.
was there anybody in the chat? I
There
didn't see
is
anything yet.
somebody. They
Okay.
mentioned. I'm not sure if it was quite a question,
Oh,
so I
okay.
didn't bring it up. When I saw it pop up, but Muhammad mentions being a custom topic between nations in terms of like grading and schooling and teaching and things like that.
Yeah.
Uh, mentions only could provide the new system in private schools. So
Yeah. Yeah.
basically, sort of corroborating some
Yep.
of the stuff that was said here. Seems like that resonated with him a
Yeah.
bit. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's unfortunate, that, and I spend a lot of time, or I spend a lot of time thinking about like, can I be doing more? Can I be doing more to help other teachers um, access this kind of teaching and adapt to it, or adapt their work to it? Um, but I'm not really sure where to begin or how to get started. And unfortunately, I have obligations to stay working, stay with the insurance to keep my, medical in check. So I can't really do a, risky thing, trying to do like my own little consulting company, or, any kind of the things that others have done before. So
Yeah.
for now, I guess one student at a time is what I do.
Well, it sounds like you're doing really well at it.
Yeah,
From
I'm trying.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how this new program works. One of the issues with a project, especially the documentaries, they take so long,
Mm-hmm.
with the post production. So most of the short documentary that was already made last year was made outside of classroom time.
Right.
I'd come in on Sundays, or we'd go up to the mountain and film, with the drone or whatever. Um, and it was always done on the weekends or in the afternoons, not during school. And now I'm developing a program that's supposed to happen during the school hours. And it's just like there's not really enough time to do some of the things that I had done. So at the very least, people are going to have to acknowledge that and know that this is going to take more than just classroom time to
Yeah.
complete. So we'll see.
Well, it's probably more fun to do that as sort of like homework than it
Yeah.
is, going
Yeah.
through, I don't know, math formulae or whatever.
I don't think that's going to stop, though. I mean, I'm going to try to help the other teachers get on board with, a little more project based and getting away from homework, or at least excessive homework. But it's pretty entrenched already.
Yeah.
With some of the teachers, and like they didn't really even see the idea of having an independent student be in the classroom at the same time they're teaching the rest of the students the main curriculum. And I just thought, well, why would there be such an issue? Like, this independent student's working independently. You would only have to check in with them, once or twice every
Right.
class. And like, if you're teaching the entire class of an hour and 20 minutes, you're doing something wrong. Like, you should be breaking it up. You should be allowing the students to work on their own. And so that's a battle I'm going to still have to try to fight. But, yeah.
Yeah.
So are you gonna? I thought I saw your name on some of the summit activities. So you're gonna be there for the summit?
Yeah. Yep.
Excellent.
All
right.
So that's San Francisco.
Yeah.
End of July, like
Yeah.
22nd through the 25th. It's the AEL Summit. For anybody watching this who is curious, it's a once a year thing. There's actually 3 of them a year now, because they do regional summits, but this one's in San Francisco. It's the North American Adobe Education Leader Summit. And I'm giving a couple talks, so
Excellent.
yeah.
I've never been to a
Prepping
summit
those.
yet, so this will be my first one. I attempted to go to previous one, but hard stuff got in the way. So
Yeah.
I think it was the first time but I'm excited about it. There'll be a lot of cool little talks. Seem like they're going to happen there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, I mean it's always a really good. I mean, it goes by really fast, but really good conversations, really good people, of course.
yeah.
I get a lot out of it every year. I get more out of the summit than I do at like Max or anything like that.
Yeah.
Even though Max is like,
The big.
15,000 people now.
You
And
know,
the summit's like, 70, maybe 80.
I really liked Max like 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I went to several of them before they hit like 10,000 people.
Yeah.
It was really nice because it wasn't so crowded. And now the last time I went was a couple of years ago. It was just too crowded. And I'm not sure I'm interested in going back, just because I don't want to have to fight to be in one of the sessions. And you either have to like sign up the day of it opening, or you have to fight to be in one of them, at the event. And it's just too many people. So
Yeah. I agree. It was a lot more manageable when it was
Yeah.
like 5,000, 6,000, 8,000. Like you said, like even just like under 10,000, it usually isn't too
Yeah.
bad. But yeah,
Yeah.
you get up there and it's just,
And I understand they
hard.
want to, I understand Adobe's imperative to make it grow and to have it large and everything, but yeah, it's just not the same kind of experience anymore.
Yeah. And it's changed so much too, because I mean, I've been going to Max since like 2008, something like that. And,
Yeah.
back then it was like the Flash conference.
Yeah. Yep.
And it was like, you'd have people talking about, all sorts of programming stuff. I mean, yeah, creativity was part of it, of course, but, it's done a complete 180
Yeah.
here where it's like, there's no programming talks at
Yeah.
all anymore. It's just all straight up like creativity and focus on the applications that most people use, like Photoshop and
Yeah.
Illustrator, InDesign, XD, and anything new they're coming out with. I'm sure Aero is going to be big this year.
Yeah.
Which Aero does kind of like, from what I understand, creep into the more technical aspects of things a bit. For people who don't know what Aero is, it's a project around AR that Adobe's investing in and building up.
Yeah. All the augmented reality stuff that I've encountered so far, just I don't know. It seems novel, but not necessarily just not valuable in the classroom quite yet.
Yeah, I don't
But
think a lot of people know what to
to do
do
with
with it
it,
yet.
yeah,
Like it's
yeah,
not like people have ideas and some of them are good ideas, but it's not like mature enough where people just like know to do, oh, let's do this, you know?
yeah. Seems like the best idea that's come out of it is like the Pokemon or Wizard game.
Mm,
Like okay, I guess it's increased game stuff, but I'd like to see it increase more of the application for learning. So we worked with this company that had a virtual heart, and our students did this little test in VR where they could look at a heart and look at different defects in a heart, and it was really cool. Certainly, I could see the utility of it, but it wasn't mature enough yet to be all that useful.
yeah.
So still needed some development there. Yeah. And the Oculus, the price tag for the Oculus just makes it difficult for education to really get their hands into it all that much.
What is that, like 400 or so?
I think now it's 400, yeah.
Mm,
But it was like 5 or 600 when we did this.
yeah.
And it's just we had 3 sets, but you know, for a classroom of 12 or 16 kids, like 3 sets just makes it awkward or it's just not the best choice to spend that much time getting everybody through by rotating.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think those, as soon as they mature, as soon as the cost of the equipment comes down, I think it'll be just fine. And I'm sure VR will be used quite a bit. What I'd love to see is an AI tutor developed to the point where the tutor sort of adapts a personality that the age of the student would respond to. And they become their sort of personal tutor that can travel between devices. So the tutor can be on the phone, on a computer, on a TV, and they basically either go to school or get assistance with their school through this AI tutor who can diagnose and keep a metric of where the student's at much better than any human being could.
Mm,
I think that'd be a very useful tool to increase the way that, or to increase the learning and hopefully the productivity of education. So, of course, they take me out of a job, so I don't want to see it that badly. But
yeah. Yeah, I don't know where that stuff's going to go.
yeah, they have some online AI education things that kind of work similar, but they're still so restricted because the AI is just not, at least that AI is not as advanced enough to really do individual diagnosis of a person
Mm,
or of their learning and learning styles or capabilities.
yeah.
So maybe in 10 years or so, who knows?
Yeah. Be interesting to watch anyway.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Well, we're getting close to the top of the hour here, so maybe we'll wrap it up if there's nothing else. Um yeah.
You don't have
So,
anything super pressing.
yeah. So, I guess I'll see you in a couple weeks then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I'll make sure to stop and say hi. And I don't know how it works. Like what sessions I get to be in. So, but if I can have any choice, I'm going to try and get into one of yours. So,
Yeah. Well, usually
yeah.
usually they'll send up like a kind of like express your interest kind of
Okay.
form where it's
Yeah.
like, it's kind of squishy usually, like,
Yeah.
and some years it's been like free for all. It's like just go wherever you want. So I don't know what they're planning on doing this year, but it could go one of those two ways for sure.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on and chatting with me.
You're welcome.
Um this was interesting, and I see we've gotten, a couple people, like seven people on this morning, on Monday morning. That's pretty good
Pretty good for a
for
Monday
that.
morning.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, thanks
Awesome.
again, and
Yeah.
best
You're
of
welcome.
luck with your peppers and so
Thanks.
forth. And yeah.
All right. All right.